Hello, thanks for coming to this Masterclass session with Jed Mercurio. Jed, as I'm sure you're aware, started out, he wrote Cardiac Arrest, the excellent medical drama under pseudonym, I believe, originally wrote that story, that show. Then he created Bodies, absolutely brilliant BBC Three medical drama that I know Stuart Murphy, who commissioned it at the time, still is obsessed with to this day and keeps going on about it whenever I see him. Then he went on to, of course, Line of Duty, which premiered as BBC Two's best performing drama series in 10 years in the first series, with over 4 million viewers, and was a huge critical success, winning loads of awards. And then he did Series 2, which was, if anything, even better, even more awards, even more critical acclaim. Actually, the awards will be next year, aren't they? Yeah. And one of the most talked about shows in recent times. So we've got a lot to talk about. I should say that if you want to tweet, you have to be very modern, you know. If you want to tweet in the middle of the session, ask a question, at any point, you can. But such is the technology that we couldn't work out what to do. So if you just tweet me, Boyd Hilton is my name, on Twitter, BOYDHALTON, and on this thing here, I can have a look and ask a question. But there will be a chance at the end, of course, to answer any questions you have as well. We're going to start with Line of Duty series, well, both series really, and the incredible phenomenon that they became. But before we get into that in detail, and before I go on about how brilliant they are and everything, let's hear from a key person in the commissioning of it, I guess, and look at some of it now in this tape. Let's have a look. Ben's showing off there that he knows what's going to happen in Series 3. Fair enough. He did very well explaining what kind of phenomenon it became. Was that from the start your intention? You wanted to create a big, bold thing that would get people talking kind of on that level of national conversation?
I don't think you can aim for that. I think if it happens, it's a fortunate accident. No, I think as a writer, you're just trying to tell the story. And do the best script you can, and then obviously in the position I'm in, then I'm involved in the realisation of that. So you honestly never know how something's going to be received. I mean, for me, what was very exciting was that I'd never written a thriller before, and it was something. It's a genre I admire, and so having the freedom to work within the criminal justice system, within crime, within policing, it brings in things that I quite like to be able to do as a writer. It can bring in jeopardy and action, whereas in a lot of TV drama, you struggle to bring those things in because it's just not credibly part of the day-to-day world of the characters.
I mean, to start with, you know, the stuff you did was set in the medical field, and you were a doctor yourself, weren't you? So you knew that world.
Yeah.
And was it then, when you were deciding to go into the police situation, were you interested in, first of all, that going behind those institutions and kind of showing the real kind of guts of them, if you like, and the reality of them, and the fact, particularly with corruption in terms of the police, was that part of what you wanted to do with Line of Duty?
Well, I'm probably quite fortunate as a writer in that I've got experience of public institutions, and that primary experience is something that I think you can generalise to all our public institutions. That there do seem to be characteristics of all of them that they have more in common than things which separate them. And so I brought that experience to writing about the police, and then in terms of the specifics of the police, that was research, and then for Series 2 we had an advisor. Series 1 we didn't have an advisor. It was all very clandestine because the police didn't want to cooperate with the series, and so we ended up talking to people anonymously, and it wasn't quite like we were meeting in subways like in the show or anything like that, but after Series 1, I was then contacted by an old schoolmate who I literally hadn't seen since we were 16, who told me he was a police inspector and had liked the show, and eventually he became our advisor.
Oh, great. So presumably it was the fact that they knew you were dealing with police corruption, they just didn't want to go anywhere near that whole topic.
Yeah, I think to an extent it would seem that police involvement in programming is PR-led. I'm certainly not advocating that police officers should stop fighting crime and should advise TV dramas. I do accept that they have better things to do, but they also do have PR departments, and part of what they deal with is this kind of thing. And we specifically didn't receive assistance, whereas other programming does. The start of Series 1 features a counter-terrorism unit shooting dead an innocent man, and we sent the script to the Met, and they said that they wouldn't do that kind of thing, so they didn't want to take part in it.
Obviously, never. That would never.
No, they've never done that.
No. Well, I rewatched that first episode of Series 1 again recently, and I remember at the time just being bowled over by it and not really analysing it. But then when you watch it again, you pack so much into that. So yeah, you have got that opening kind of incredible action sequence where you say they counter-terrorist people shoot the wrong person, and that affects Martin Compston's character. His story, like in the first 5-10 minutes, could be a whole episode of a normal show, couldn't it really? And then you have introduced layer upon layer of, you've got characters, you've got people doing things they shouldn't be doing, you've got the dodgy girlfriend, you've got people having affairs, you've got crimes being committed. There is enough in that first episode for most normal 6-8 part shows, I felt. Was that your intention from the start, that you wanted to kind of have a huge amount of stuff going on and keep the pace up and have that every scene where there's something going on, stories being told, characters being developed?
Well, when I'm writing, I'm not thinking like that. I'm just doing what feels right for me, and I do kind of appreciate the brevity and directness of storytelling. So the model for that is obviously you see a great big police operation go wrong, you end up with one particular character, then the next scene is directing traffic, job done. And that's sort of how I talk when we were editorializing these things. That's what I was saying. You just get it from that. And the other thing was, because the way the show is written and the way that commissions follow from a first episode, I've kind of learned that you're mad to save things. If that first episode doesn't feel jam-packed with material, you don't want a situation where it doesn't get green-lit because someone says, oh, well, it was a bit slow, it didn't seem like there was enough story. And when you say, oh yeah, but wait till I tell you about episode 2, it's too late.
Right, yeah. Did you have Lenny James in mind from the start? Did you write that character with him in mind? At what point did he, because talk about the casting in general, it feels that every character is so perfect, fits perfectly, the actors fit perfectly those characters. And in Series 1 of Line of Duty, the Lenny James character is fascinating, and you do actually talk about, in that first episode, the fact that he's black and the fact that's an issue for some of the police. Yeah. Was that all part of the idea, or did that come later?
No, I mean, the way it works is that you can never guarantee getting an actor, because when you never know when a project's going to get greenlit to production, and then you commit to a production schedule, and it may well be that actor just isn't available. So what tends to happen is that there's post-casting, there's a cross-fertilization between the cast and the script. And that certainly happened with Lenny. He was one of the people on a list for that character, and the character was written as ethnically neutral, of course. And when the idea came up of Lenny playing the role, my one caveat was that I don't believe that this is a colourblind world. Even though we practice colourblind casting, the world of the drama, police post-McPherson, an officer under investigation for corruption, we can't ignore the character's ethnicity. We have to take it on. And so that ended up being a very productive conversation with Lenny about fortunately he knew black police officers. He got a friend who'd gone through the police pre-McPherson, post-McPherson, and we were able to bring that in, and we sort of worked together on that in the rehearsal period about just nailing how that character would engage with his own ethnicity and how the world around him would.
And as your showrunner on Line of Duty and on your show, you're on Bodies as well, and you're on your next show, which we'll get to later. Is that key in this process, that you're making decisions about casting, about every step of the way, I guess, but particularly with casting, is that a key part of showrunning?
I think it is. I mean, having that direct relationship with the cast is incredibly rewarding and helpful as a writer. At the start of my career, I would write the script and I'd have no say in who played those roles, and sometimes I'd see who got the part, and I thought, what kind of idiot thought that this guy or girl is what's written on the page? You obviously are too stupid to work in TV if you've made that decision. Unfortunately, that proved to be correct. But and I think that's a frustrating thing for all writers. And so one of the things that I'm able to do in the very fortunate position I'm in is that I obviously don't have final say on casting. That lies with the broadcaster. But I'm part of that discussion. And part of the input I can bring is to say, well, I think that this actor is somewhere within the Venn diagram of what's on the page, and at the moment it's half and half, and with a script rewrite then we can have two completely coinciding circles on the Venn diagram, and that's what I then endeavour to do, and it's an ongoing process. So once someone is cast, those conversations start involving the director as well, and obviously the rest of the production team, and then once we're up and running, because I'm around a lot, I'm able to have those conversations in quite a low-key way, because there's a lot of waiting around on set when the cameras are being moved, when lighting's being done. And then you just chew the fat with the guys, and we just have a conversation, and for them it doesn't mean that it's a big deal bringing up something they want to bring up about a future episode or a scene that's just been shot. And so they can, without having to go, get in touch with their agent, and the agent writing an email and all that, they can say, I wasn't really very happy with that scene that we shot a couple of days ago. Do you mind having a look at it and saying if you think that I nailed this bit or that bit, or saying I'm looking ahead to this other episode and I don't quite get why the character does this or that. And then we have a conversation, and almost always the result of that is a revision to the script, which is that very productive process of cross-fertilisation.
Because in series 2, you cast Robert Lindsay, is that right? Initially, and then he left the project. What happened there? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's just the two circles on the Venn diagram didn't get coincident enough, and so I mean it was a very straightforward professional discussion, and it had to be made early, because it would have been incredibly costly and disruptive to go on beyond the point that we were at. So it just wasn't working for Robert, for me, and we had to make a change.
And of course, Hawes, casting Keeley Hawes. I mean, A, is there a pressure to cast star names, and B, when the star name, someone like Keeley Hawes, ends up doing such an astonishing job, it must be. Did you know from the start, you thought, yeah, Keeley Hawes can do this role, it's going to work perfectly, or were you as surprised as we were seeing how amazing she was? It's such a different role.
No, I wouldn't say I was surprised, because you hope that going through a process. I mean, with Robert, we didn't audition Robert.
Right.
And that's very important to mention, because at that point we hadn't got Keeley, we hadn't got Jess Rain, and we were under pressure to replace Lenny. And we always knew we would. It was always part of the design of the show, and so there was a sense that we had to go through a process where you're looking at bigger names who won't audition. You send them the script, and it has to be an offer, and then you hope it will work. And whereas Keeley auditioned, so it was possible to see what she did in the audition, to talk about the role, and to already start that process. If someone auditions and they're very promising, you can start that process in the room with the director and see, in the room, alter their performance and say, let's do the scene again in this way or that way. But yeah, you kind of, once you get out there, you kind of think, oh, for God's sake, please don't be shit. Please, please don't be. And she was great. From day one, she did everything she needed to do and more. And I was really chuffed for Keeley. I think that she's a really nice person to work with and a really good actress, and I think it's fantastic that people are really recognising her ability.
Absolutely. Ben talked in the video about throwing Jessica Rain out of the window, which was an amazing climax to that first episode. Was that kind of thing? At what point does that kind of thing arrive, that you're going to have this big shocking moment, and also the fact that you cast someone, a very well-known actress, and so making the shock even bigger that you're getting rid of her at the end of the first episode.
There was no plan to do that initially. It was when I started working on the script that, as the story formed, that became a strong idea. And then once we were committed to that in the script, we then looked at what kind of person would play that role. And obviously, the fact that Jessica's got a following and she seemed to be such a good fit for the show, then people would assume that she would be there to stay. But there was, and obviously we're playing a game there. But also we were playing a game in the script anyway. We did certain things that I think that came out of the discussion about avoiding the character dead meat in you know, the Hot Shots Part 2, the dead meat character, the guy who does all the things that happen in an action movie before someone just gets killed. Yeah. And so with Jess's character, we did all the things that you expect will give a character longevity, but in a cliched way. Right. So the little drinking problem, the impulse control problem, getting off with her colleague, you think, oh, tedious, dramatic, personal strand, and then you kind of, and then you kill her off. So no one's thinking you're doing that to kill a character off. They're thinking you're doing that because you've got no better idea of how to fill out someone's personal life. Are
you sitting at home and rubbing your hands with Keeley, kind of knowing that we're all going to watch that moment and make all those assumptions, and then you're going to pull the rug from under us? It must be quite exciting to see it play out, the reaction to play out.
The reaction, not in the run-up to it. Like I said, you have no idea.
Sure.
You know, you can just think people are just going to say it's rubbish, and sometimes they do, and so you. It's very nice when your intentions come off.
And what about the other side of that? So obviously with Twitter and all of that, people are tweeting about the show, and you yourself, I know at the end of the last episode of Series 2, you took part in an online, you answered some questions about people had about the ending and all of that. How do you deal with that? Do you enjoy that process of interacting with viewers online, or is it a bit of a pain?
Well, I mean, that was a special case, the kind of webcast after. I would probably be cautious about doing something like that again, because I'm not on Twitter. I do interact through social media with fans of the show, and sometimes I do it anonymously, and sometimes I do it as myself, and I always choose the positive conversations. Or if it's someone being negative and they're not factually correct, then I might anonymously correct the facts. But what I don't do is put any kind of editorial on top of that. But I think, you know, I'm not alone in this. I know some writers have occasionally engaged with the trolls, and it's you just can't win. You know, there are people out there who are just, you know, recreational abusers. They just want to wind you up. If they were sitting where you are now, they really wouldn't say those things because something quite unpleasant might happen next. Yeah. Whereas they're quite happy to say it in, you know, sitting in their pants, morbidly obese behind their keyboard.
Absolutely. Yeah. In terms of the process, I meant to ask this earlier, but in terms of mapping out the story, because you have very dense stories and a lot of characters and you know, particularly I'm thinking in Series 2, the point where the start point and the end point and the explanation of the whole of what actually happened in the end of Series 2, Episode 6. How do you do it? Do you physically, do you have post-it notes? Do you have just, you're writing it all in chronologically?
No, it's chronological. We do it episode by episode. So obviously I have to have some idea. But what I try to avoid with Line of Duty is getting too attached to something further down the line, because the problem with that in a thriller is you can sometimes end up being forced to tread water or go through a circular plot in order to be in the right place in episode 4 or wherever it is you want to be. So with Line of Duty, it's a bit more of a high wire act. I write an outline of an episode, deliver it, we have a conversation about it. people sometimes ask me, well, what does this lead into? And sometimes I have an idea of what it may be, and other times I say I don't know. And then I write the episode and we go through the same process. And it's only when we're happy with an episode we move on to the next one. And then if in subsequent episodes we end up encountering things that are logic problems from what have gone before or inconsistencies, then we reverse engineer it. I can go back and change something in order to make it all fit together.
Okay. We have actually got some questions that have coming in about Line of Duty. You'll be pleased to know.
Is it some people reacting to the thing I said about morbidly obese?
No, not yet. No, it's too early for that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe soon. I've realised I can look at them on my own iPad. I don't need this one here, so I've brilliantly managed to look at them on my own iPad. Carrie Wooten asks, the two series of Line of Duty are quite different and unique. Well, where will the third one take us? Can you say anything about the third one?
It will follow the pattern of our team of investigators. Follow an inquiry, start an inquiry into an allegedly corrupt police officer, and so it will be a brand new guest lead who is involved in some act of police corruption, which then leads to a serialised investigation over 6 episodes.
So Lindsay Denton won't be back?
There are no plans to answer that question.
What a great answer. Of course, someone asked, does he think Lindsay Denton is really guilty? Where do you stand on that topic?
I think there's a difference in the show between being legally guilty and being morally guilty, and I think that the character operates somewhere in the grey area between those two, which was also a characteristic of Tony Gates in Series 1. One of the things I learned on Bodies was that an actor cannot play ambiguity. So Patrick Ballady could not play that Roger Hurley didn't know whether he was competent or not. Patrick had to play that he believed he was. And with Lenny and with Keeley, they are playing that they are innocent. They believe, the character believes that what they have done is justified morally and they shouldn't be punished for it.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, because I was thinking, again, rewatching that first episode, how often you go to close-ups and you're kind of, they have very enigmatic expressions on their face, and we're always trying to work out how we should feel about them, whether they are kind of morally justifiable. Yeah. And I guess that's key, that the performances, they're just thinking stuff through almost. That's the way it looks like when you're watching it.
And it's that thing of an actor playing a character lying, you know, a person pretending to be a person pretending. Yeah. And it takes a certain kind of actor with certain kinds of cognitive skills to be able to do that. And for me, it's one of the things that I really enjoy about the writing process, that opportunity to avoid putting things into black and white and having to go down a road which I think would have harmed the show. And I'm hugely grateful for all the editorial support I've got from World Productions and from the BBC in that. There was never a point where they said, let's make the guest lead an out-and-out villain who is the whole audience will want to see convicted, and then let's wrap it all up at the end in a neat bow. And you know, some of the reaction to the end of Series 2, I think, really originated from the fact that some people wanted everything to be laid out for them and say, well, justice has been done. And unfortunately for Keeley's character, she doesn't believe that justice has been done, but it's up to the audience to figure out what they think. Absolutely, yeah.
And Ben Dowell asks, again, talking about Series 3, does Jed agree with Ben Stevenson that Line of Duty 3 is the most exciting yet? You're not going to say no, are you?
I don't know.
No?
Well, I mean, it's a script at the moment. We haven't made it.
There you go. Let's move on to Critical, which is your new project for Sky One.
Yes.
Which you're on the 100 and what day of filming?
140.
So this is a big, huge kind of bold, ambitious
Yeah,
thing.
we're like a tenth of the way through. No, today's day 140, and I'm very pleased that the cast and crew are slaving away at Longcross Studios, whereas I'm here. But yeah, we go through till mid-October. I mean, it's the biggest shoot I've ever done. It's 13 hours.
Right. Well, I think we'll get an idea of just how big this is when we look at this tape of Critical. Sorry, I was meant to warn you that if you were squeamish. But if I had have warned you, what would you have done? Like run out or something? I don't know. And you would have missed on seeing that very exciting taster.
Can we just post-warn people that if anyone is squeamish, they shouldn't have watched that?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But you've gone through it, it's fine. So a couple of things arose from that. One is you're going back to the medical world. Was that something you kind of wanted to do?
Yeah. I mean, I tried to go back to the medical world a couple of times before Critical, and things just hadn't been green lit. And this actually started out as a kind of set of ambitions, because actually Sky were interested in doing a medical drama. Rather than creating a medical drama and taking it to the broadcasters, I had a conversation with Sky just on my own about what would work for them, and then I went away and came back with this what I think is a hugely ambitious piece, which is incredibly focused on procedure, the masses of prosthetics. It's a real-time hour. It's always a critically injured patient, so they're properly mangled, and the first 10 minutes is just making them stable enough to do anything with, and then it's finding out what's really wrong with them and then taking them to the operating theatre and saving their life. And we just see every single kind of second of that procedure, and when people open them up, we see that happen. The prosthetics are incredibly lifelike. The actors have learned to do the operations. So we have a medical advisor on set every day. We have surgeons. They're taking them through exactly what they do. We use real surgical instruments. Everything is done for real. And, you know, we have up to 5 cameras running at once. It's a massive logistical exercise in doing something that I don't think has ever been done before in the medical drama.
So Lenny James is a qualified surgeon, effectively. Is that
he's pretty good now, actually. Yeah. I mean, they can do all the stuff. I mean, they know the anatomy now. They've done so many laparotomies and thoracotomies and clamshells that actually they can pretty much do it. They can recognise the anatomy. Lenny can, like with bodies, towards the end, Max and Patrick. Not Keith, but Max and
Keith
Patrick.
Allen. I can't imagine Keith Allen. I wouldn't want Keith Allen to go anywhere near me.
Max and Patrick could do cesareans towards the end. Right. I mean, they could. We know. Well, with every disrespect to obstetricians, it's not that hard. But it's they knew the anatomical layers, they knew the instruments, they knew the techniques, and our guys are the same. So Lenny and Catherine, who do pretty much all of the surgery, are really up to speed. And one of our cast, the guy who plays the anaesthetist, used to be a doctor, so he's quite handy as well to have around. Sometimes he was an SHO in ENT, I was an SHO in general medicine, and sometimes it ends up as like the NHS in the 90s, 2 SHOs trying to figure out how to save someone's life. But it was, it's just great that they've taken on that side of the job.
Right. And the decision to make to do it in real time, to tell it in real time, was that created a rod for your own back? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but it was part of the realism. The idea was we're going to make the most realistic medical drama that anyone's attempted to make, and so. Sorry, I should say we're attempting to make the most realistic. I'm not claiming it is, because it hasn't been finished and it hasn't gone out yet. But we're attempting to do that. And one of the things that allows that is real time. That you don't cut away and then create an illusion that things happen really fast, and you can just go from a patient. Anyone who's been in a hospital knows how long it takes to get an X-ray. You know, and so we use the trauma centre model, because any other form of medical procedure just takes too long. So in the trauma centres, they do work that fast, and the best ones are are designed to get patients stabilised within that first hour, and that's what we concentrate on.
And is it completely set in that environment? Or do you explore the characters' personal lives and all of that? No, just focused.
No, I mean we don't explore the patients' personal lives, but
right.
I mean generally the patients are unconscious because they've been so badly involved. Either something big and heavy has hit them very hard, or they've hit something big and heavy from a great height or whatever. We don't do patient backstory at all. Right. It's purely about the procedure. But the characters, the core medical team, I think, are very distinctive, and each of them has their own character and story, and there are relationships which develop over the course of the series. But it's kind of done on the go. Right. There, within this kind of setting of a real-time hour, there is just the odd minute where they're waiting for a patient to go through the CT scanner, or they're kind of scrubbing up and getting their gloves on and gowning up, and they've got a minute to talk about things that aren't to do with the patient, and so that's how we do it.
Stuart talked there on the video about how the look of it does look incredible with the kind of that set and the kind of the sci-fi quality. Was that something that you had in mind from the start? That was gonna...
Well, when I started researching it, I went back to my alma mater. I went back to Birmingham, and the Queen Elizabeth Hospital now in Birmingham is one of the most advanced in Europe. When I was there, it was kind of like the bit of it that was there when I was there looks like a bit of a shed attached to this enormous crashed spaceship that's in the middle of Selly Oak. And a guy I was in the medics review with is now a trauma consultant there, and he's part of the army team. So I went and shadowed him. And saw the major traumas they were dealing with. Went to the operating theatre, and actually then also, he would call, if someone was coming in from Afghanistan, he would call me, and I would go and I'd watch. I mean, that's really major stuff. The stuff that gets back from there. So that's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. But it is incredibly futuristic looking. It's a purpose-built hospital built in the 21st century, and it just doesn't look like your standard hospital, and it was important for us to do that. I think a lot of it is about how you find a location and you build a set, and whereas we decided to build a set within a studio and just made it as high-tech as possible, and so we use all the most advanced equipment that we can get. It all exists. It's all used in the NHS.
So that swipey thing with the doctors' names, does that exist?
Yeah. I mean, some hospitals are more computerized than others, but we've just been selective. In going round, we've picked things that we want for our show, and not every hospital is like that, but we've picked the most appealing and advanced aspects of all the hospitals that we've been fortunate enough to visit.
And is the show running aspect of it, again, because is the difference between show running something like Line of Duty with that kind of storytelling and a kind of 5 or 6 part series of BBC Two different to this 13 part, and you say hundreds of days of filming? Does that feel a huge big step up in terms of the show running?
Well, it's a different process. I think I think you have to show run each show differently anyway, because every show is different. So the way that I show run Bodies is different from how I show run Line of Duty, and that's different from how I do Critical. Because firstly, you're dealing with different people, and different people need to be managed in different ways, and also in terms of the nature of it. Because Critical is a studio-based show, the production office is adjacent to the studio. Line of Duty is a location-based show, so the office facilities, the editing, my office, things like that are remote, and so I have to choose when I'm on set and when I'm in the office and when I'm in the edit, whereas it's all together on Critical, and it needs to be, because it's so technical. And the medical advisor, no matter how many drafts of script go through with medical advisors, there's always something not right on the day, because it's just so hard for people to visualize doing an operation based on a script. And so I have to be on set and kind of manage that process between medical advisors, cast, and directors.
So are you here now on stage with me talking in the they film? You're worried they're going to have the odd medical mishap?
Well, they'll phone me if it's a problem.
Good. We're getting questions through again on Critical. Robin Parker asks, was it a challenge to create rounded characters with depth when the focus is entirely on the surgical procedure?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's, again, that's part of the casting process, getting people who feel distinctive and who feel you know things about those characters if you've got the kinds of actors who you can talk about how they arrived at the position they are when you find them at the start of the series. And so I think that people will infer a huge amount about the characters just from all that work that's gone in. But also, you know, we do play with foreground and background. Sometimes we foreground story where you get to be with characters who are having interactions that are personal rather than professional. But other times we background it. Sometimes you just catch a glimpse in the back of a shot of two people just kind of like walking past each other and brushing hands, and you know they're shagging. Or it's things like that, and it's like a real workplace where, you know, there are the loudmouths who tell you who they're shagging, and then there's the clever people who don't, and so we draw that distinction in making the show in this sort of quite layered way.
Sure. Robin also asked, which is a good question, some general questions before I throw it open to the audience. I'll throw it in a sec. Robin asks, are there other institutions you're interested in tackling and other genres?
Yes.
Any you could?
But I'm not. I mean, I'm very busy on Line of Duty and Critical, and you know I love working on these shows, and I'm going to stick with them as long as we're lucky enough to be getting recommissioned.
The session that's going on right now, that thankfully you're all missing because you're coming to this one, is about is TV better than film? Do you have a feeling about that?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And why?
Well, I think, well, as a writer, I mean I think that television is, there is an opportunity in TV to do the job I do, and there aren't many people who get to do it, but it's principally led by the writing, and yes, there are some very successful writer-directors, but a lot of the time, the way the film industry works is that there's the script, and then the director comes in, and also just the kind of mindset within film is like that. And a lot of the time when I meet film people, I just don't really like them. You know, I just think some of them are just real wankers when it comes to how they treat writers. I think television is because it's more writer-led, I think generally the quality's higher.
And were you influenced by those big American shows that you know, the kind of the Breaking Bads and you know, the Sopranos, that whole kind of premium quality,
yeah,
almost, you know, cinematic?
Well, influenced in a sense, it's a tricky thing to ask a program maker about being influenced, because I think that I don't have the same relationship with drama that I had before I worked in telly. So I can speak with kind of unfiltered affection about Hill Street Blues. Right. But it's harder for me to talk about shows that exist in the time that I've been working, because it's like, you know, it's like if someone just zips an ace past you when you're playing tennis, you don't go, I really admire that. You go, well, okay, great, but I'm going to have to deal with that. and it's the same for me. It's the same thing. It's okay to admire Roger Federer or Rory McIlroy, but it'd be really weird for me to admire someone I kind of play sport with.
Right, right.
That would just be a bit weird and uncomfortable. If they beat me, great, but you know, I don't admire that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I will throw open and say my final question we have to talk about is your next project for BBC is a huge big stepping out of your comfort zone, isn't it? So
yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm doing Lady Chatterley's Lover for BBC One, a 90-minute single starring Holiday Granger and Richard Madden and James Norton. Yeah, it's not a precinct drama.
No. And why were you attracted to doing that, and kind of how did it come about? Was it your idea to do your version of that?
It was something that people knew I was interested in, just because I'd read Lawrence. It's like one of the few authors I know well, because I stopped doing English at O-level, and we did Lawrence for O-level, and there were certain things about his writing that stayed with me, and so I did know the book, I knew his work, and so it was just a conversation, because obviously it's a very commercial title, and I kind of expressed an interest in being involved, and I was very lucky that people took that seriously.
Exciting. And so when's that due? So have you written it? And
yeah, we shoot it in October.
Cool. Okay. Let's throw it to us. There's a lady in the front row who's been waiting to ask a question for a long time. Hopefully there's a mic. Yeah, there's a mic coming.
Hi there, it's Teresa Wise from the Royal Television Society. First of all, I'm a massive fan, so thank you so much for making those shows available to us. But I guess what I wanted to get a feel for is, why is it that medical drama is such a rich theme in the US consistently? Why do you feel has provided some of the highest the most amazing drama, and we don't seem to get very much of that in the UK, and I'm so glad we've got critical, but it is such a rich theme, and we somehow commissioners don't seem to have been drawn to it in the same way.
Well, in the landscape in America is different, because there isn't a clear juggernaut out there to compete with. We're in a post-ER era, and since ER, that there isn't a medical drama that has done as well. So people are looking for the next ER. So that
I guess House and Grey's, I mean, in their different ways.
Yeah, but yes, that's true. That's true. But they came out of looking for those dramas, and those things are now at the end of their cycle, really. And so people are looking for the next hit. You're right. I should have mentioned those. But over here, it seems like Holby and Casualty are going to be here forever. They just are. They'll never end. and so how does ITV compete against that? Because there's a certain crossover in that audience. They can't just do the same thing. They've tried and it hasn't worked. And so if you look at what I've done, I've tended to do things that were sort of revisionist of those dramas, and they've played on different platforms. They've been on BBC Two or BBC Three, and this is on Sky, and that's. I think that it's just very difficult for people to want to take on doing medical drama when they just see these two juggernauts out there just rolling on year after year.
Thank you. Yeah, lady there at the end of that row.
Hi Jed, I'm Maroe. I run the drama programme at the Wellcome Trust. So we help writers and filmmakers and programme makers explore medical content. And you talked a little bit about the police being a little bit obstructive in line of duty, but obviously you've had a much better relationship with medical advisors working on critical, and I just wondered if you had any advice in terms of working with professional advisors when you're making programmes about how to get the best of that relationship.
Always use more than one, because I know this from cardiac arrest. We did use advisors a little bit in the first series and the second series and the third series, and often they would say things that weren't right, and not necessarily things that were technically wrong, but in terms of the mindset, they had their own agenda, and because of the controversial area of, say, policing, we just had to be careful that people were forcing their own agenda onto the show, and so. With critical, what we have is we end up just working with people that we can work with, who get it and support what we're trying to do. And there are some people that we sort of had to stop working with because they saw things very differently. They couldn't get their head round the fact that there are doctors who do things differently from them. I'm not saying that we were doing things that were weren't plausible or probable. I mean, it was genuinely a consultant saying, well, this is how I would do this operation. Well, no one gives a shit, because actually loads of people do it slightly differently, and that's just crazy. And we had the same thing on bodies. So it's about being flexible and using your imagination and fitting in with the team and serving the program. But I always check what someone's advised, and quite often I'll say I don't believe you and check something else, and that can be a bit kind of tense.
Thank you. Lady behind.
Hiya, Jed. My name's Sophie. I'm a writer. I just wanted to ask, how easy or hard did you find it to transition from writer to writer-producer / showrunner in a country where typically that isn't a norm? And how did you go about having that first conversation where you said, not only do I want to write this, but I kind of want to make it myself?
It's hard. It is hard. I mean, I had a big break, really, which was the fact that the first thing I wrote, Cardiac Arrest, was set in a world I knew very well. And when I did the first series, I was very shocked and a little quite frustrated at how I was shut out of quite a lot of decisions that I thought materially affected the show. And I came straight into writing for TV cold. I'd never done anything like that before. So I got a kind of set of preconceptions about how TV would work and how the writer would be involved, and as I said, it wasn't like that. So with the second series, I took a sabbatical to be the medical advisor. That was my way in. It was kind of like a bit of a sneak, but it meant that I was on set and I was advising the cast, and I was always able to talk to the directors and the editors and everybody involved about making the show authentic. And that also coincided with being able to stand up for the script in certain situations, or to be part of a discussion which would alter the script. And I think the thing that writers find most frustrating is when they're not part of those discussions, when they get marginalised and something is changed for the worse, and they say, if only I'd been part of that discussion. I'm not saying it would have been what I'd written, but if I'd been part of that discussion, I would have been able to say, well, we could do this and we could do that, and then all this would it would all fit together. So by the end of Cardiac Arrest, I'd got quite a lot of on-set experience, and that was something that I could then use to say, well, on the next thing I do, I'd like to have this level of involvement. And so that is something that is kind of taken as a given. And occasionally I get into a situation where I realise that people are uncomfortable with that. And that almost always leads to the project ending. You know, that we just can't find a way of working together. And regrettably, it just means that either I leave or I leave. And that's it. And it's not that I get huffy and go. I'll probably get fired, and that happened on a show I did a few years ago. I was involved in the beginning of it, and then people were genuinely shutting me out, and I found it very difficult to deal with. And in the end, it was just an unworkable situation, and it was either I was going to resign or they were going to fire me, and I just held out for the payoff to get fired.
Sadly, we've run out of time. I'm really sorry we've run out of time. But thanks, Jed, so much for answering the questions in a fascinating and honest, interesting way. Thank you all for coming. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.